Hello and welcome to Indus News Live with me, Usman Lone. Well, we begin this hour with our top story, and that's with the United Nations that says 13 people have been killed in a new massacre in the Congolese city of Beni. It blamed the Allied Democratic Forces, a local militia group, for the attack. According to reports, 81 people have been killed in the region since the 5th of November. The militant group has been present in Congo since 1995 and is accused of killing thousands of civilians over the last 5 years. People are protesting against the UN peacekeepers over their failure to protect them from militant attacks. The UN peacekeeping mission said it's launching a probe after gathering evidence that its troops may have killed a protester in Beni. Now, in Iraq, security forces shoot dead 2 protesters and wound several others in Baghdad. This brings the death toll to over 340 since protests against corruption and unemployment began last month. In the southern parts of the city, life remains at a standstill as protesters sealed streets off with burning tires. Protesters are demanding an overhaul of the political system and reforms to rescue the country's sinking economy. The US has repeatedly urged the Iraqi government to address the demonstrators' demands and refrain from using violence. Now to Iran, where Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says the Iranian nation has defeated a foreign conspiracy behind recent protests. He was addressing the Volunteer Basij Force in Tehran, which helped put down the demonstrations. The Supreme Leader said the recent unrest was a dangerous plot in which big money had been invested. Meanwhile, the Iranian Interior Minister says over 700 banks and 140 government sites had been torched in the disturbances. Abdulreza Rahmani Fazli said around 200,000 people took part in nationwide protests after a sudden petrol price hike in the country. Now, staying in the Middle East, Israel has carried out more airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Israeli army spokesman Avishai Adrei said fighter jets struck Hamas buildings in the city of Khan Yunis, but no casualties have yet been reported. The Israeli army said it struck a series of military targets in response to rockets fired from Palestine. The army said a weapons manufacturing site and underground infrastructure were targeted. 36 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces in violation of a ceasefire agreed on November the 14th. Now here in Pakistan, Prime Minister Imran Khan condemns India's plan to implement an Israeli approach in occupied Kashmir. The Indian Consul General in the United States, Sandeep Chakravorty, said New Delhi will build settlements so Hindus can return to the valley. Talking about the Israeli model, the Indian envoy said if the Israeli people can do it, so can the Indians. Chakravorty said Hindu settlers will be able to occupy all of the land in Kashmir, just like Israel gradually occupied Palestine. In a tweet response, Imran Khan said this shows the fascist Hindutva ideology of the Indian government. Khan said world powers are silent over Indian human rights violations in the valley because of trade interests in India. Well, the Indian Supreme Court has reserved its verdict on pleas challenging restrictions imposed in occupied Kashmir. Lawyers for the petitioners argued that an entire valley of 8 million people cannot be locked down legally. They said the curbs are unconstitutional and that such restrictions have to pass the test of proportionality. A 3-member bench reserved the verdict. India imposed a curfew and communications blackout after illegally annexing occupied Kashmir on the 5th of August. Now, in India, the State Minister for Home Affairs confirms the arrest of over 5,000 people in occupied Kashmir since the 5th of August. Speaking in Parliament, the minister says over 600 people are still in custody. 3 of the valley's former chief ministers are among the detainees. The occupied region is under curfew since the 5th of August, creating a severe shortage of food and medicine. Earlier, the Indian Supreme Court reserved its verdict on multiple pleas challenging oppressive restrictions imposed in occupied Kashmir. Lawyers for the petitioners argued that an entire valley of 8 million people cannot be locked down. In Hong Kong, the 11-day standoff at the Polytechnic University between the police and protesters has ended. Authorities say no pro-democracy protesters were found inside the university premises. This was the last of 5 campuses protesters occupied to block transport links between Hong Kong Island and Kowloon on the mainland. The protesters blocked the entrance of Hong Kong's Cross Harbour Tunnel, which was reopened to traffic today. Pro-democracy activists say they're planning fresh demonstrations on the weekend after a landslide victory in local elections last weekend. Authorities hope the post-election climate will remain relatively calm after 6 months of unrest. Now, US Congress has invited President Donald Trump to its first impeachment hearing on the 4th of December. House Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler says Trump could either attend or stop complaining about the process. The Democrats are investigating allegations of a quid pro quo by Trump with Ukrainian President Zelensky for a personal political favor. Multiple government witnesses have testified at this month's impeachment hearings. The House Judiciary Committee will soon take over the impeachment probe from the Intelligence Committee. The Democrats are aiming for a final House vote by Christmas, which will set the stage for a likely Senate trial early in the year in January. Well, the US envoy to Afghanistan, John Bass, has condemned the arrest of 2 activists by Afghanistan's army. The pair allege a massive paedophile ring is operating in the schools of Logar province. On the 13th of November, Musa Mahmoudi and Ehsan Ullah Hamidind told The Guardian over 500 children were sexually abused in 6 schools in Logar. In a series of tweets, Bass said the detention of the activists isn't acceptable because it's an act of intimidation. Earlier, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani said he disagrees with the intelligence agency's approach. He instructed the National Directorate of Security to hand the activists over to the Ministry of Interior Affairs. US President Donald Trump says he will designate Mexican drug cartels as terrorists for their role in trafficking people and narcotics. This prompted a request for talks by Mexico. In an interview, Trump said the designation procedure is not easy, but they are well into it. Soon afterwards, Mexico's foreign ministry said it will seek a high-level meeting with the US State Department. Mexico has long been besieged by violence from drug cartels and criminal gangs fighting for control of territory. Well, staying in South America, and Bolivia has appointed its first ambassador to the United States in 11 years. The Foreign Ministry says that Walter Seret Cuella will fill the position in Washington. Cuella will require the Senate's approval, which is controlled by Evo Morales' movement for socialism. The interim president, Jeanine Áñez, has taken steps to change Bolivia's foreign policy during her short tenure. Áñez cut ties with socialist Cuba and Nicolas Maduro's Venezuela. Meanwhile, La Paz wants the arrest of former minister Juan Román Quintana, along with other key members of Morales' government. Quintana and several other officials have taken refuge in the Mexican embassy in the capital, La Paz. Well, we'll be back with more news from around the world right after this short break. Hello again, it's good to have you back. Now, the EU Parliament has elected Ursula von der Leyen as the new president of the European Commission. The German Conservative won the approval by 461 votes to 157. Leyen will take charge as president of the European bloc on the 1st of December. Leyen's comfortable majority win ensured her plan to transform the EU into a green superpower was approved. Addressing the European Parliament, she said fighting climate change is an existential challenge. The new Commission president vowed to provide funding to help EU economies adapt to lower fossil fuel consumption. Well, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has called on European countries to take a common approach towards China. Speaking at the Parliament, Merkel said it would be disastrous for Europe to sideline China over technology and human rights. She said a united approach is also needed regarding the rollout of the next generation 5G mobile network. Some German lawmakers want to exclude China's Huawei from 5G contracts following warnings by the United States. Merkel also said that maintaining the NATO defense alliance is of utmost importance to Germany. She said the transatlantic alliance is pivotal for Europe's defense. Now to France, where farmers stage a tractor rally to protest against President Emmanuel Macron's anti-farming policies. They blocked the Champs-Élysées Avenue in Paris with bales of straw and obstructed highways leading to the capital. They are demanding an immediate lifting of a ban on the weed killer glyphosate. Vegan activists' attack on livestock farms and butcher shops have also caused outrage among farmers. Now in Albania, a 6.4 magnitude quake shook the capital Tirana, killing at least 26 people and injuring 650 others. The earthquake is the strongest hit the country in decades. The Albanian Defense Ministry says a person died after jumping out of a building during the earthquake. The bodies of 3 other victims were pulled from the wreckage of 2 collapsed buildings in Dorez. A ministry spokeswoman said 2 women were found in the rubble of an apartment building in the northern village of Thumani. Firefighters and the army are helping people trapped under the rubble. In England, the bodies of 16 migrants found dead in a lorry in the UK last month have been returned to Vietnam. Police found 39 bodies inside a refrigerated lorry in Essex on the 23rd of October. The bodies were flown to Hanoi's Noi Bai airport and taken to the rural town of Dien Chau for funeral proceedings. Investigations are underway in the UK and Vietnam, where several people have been arrested and charged. Families of the deceased said it was a relief to receive the bodies of their loved ones after a month-long wait. Officials say the bodies of the remaining victims will be sent home soon. Pakistani President Arif Ali says Pakistan has played a pivotal role for peace in Africa and looks forward to enhancing relations with African countries. They're hosting a conference focused on Pakistan's foreign policy regarding Africa. Speaking at the Envoys Conference, Alvi said Pakistan and Africa share many problems which they should address together. Alvi said the 2 sides need to fight poverty and ignorance collectively. Earlier, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi also addressed the conference. Qureshi said the promotion of tourism and enhancing trade ties are Pakistan's top priorities. In Bangladesh, an anti-terrorism court sentences 7 men to death for the attack on the Hole Artisan Cafe in 2016. 22 people, including 17 foreigners, were killed in the attack on the popular night spot in Dhaka. The court acquitted one of the accused, Mizanur Rahman, for lack of evidence against him. Last year, police charged 8 members of the banned militant group Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh for carrying out the attack. The 2016 assault was the bloodiest terrorist event in Bangladesh's history. Well, Malaysia's Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad says his country is talking to Pyongyang and may resume relations with North Korea. In an interview, Mahathir said Malaysia is well placed to interact with both Koreas because of its human resources and stable politics. He said Kuala Lumpur wants friendly relations with all of the world's countries, even North Korea. Mahathir said North Korean officials plan to visit Malaysia, and he added both countries will decide for an appropriate time for Malaysia to open an embassy there. He also repeated his support for South Korea's regional peace initiative. Well, staying with South Korea, and some people said income disparity has turned a huge number of students against President Moon Jae-in. Young people are calling for the president to shift his policy focus from North Korea to them, as many are finding it difficult to cope with living costs. More in this report.
The old Korean concept of dirt spoons, those born to low-income families, and gold spoons, people from better-off families, has recently exploded onto the political scene. 26-year-old university student Kim Jae-hoon is among those who have borne the brunt of the country's deepening inequality.
I can't complain that we have different starting lines. It is fine that I start from a different level, but I am upset with someone getting perks.
Young, low-income voters like Kim have deserted President Moon in record numbers. The president concedes he had fallen short on his promises to improve employment and social justice.
여러 가지 이제 불공정한 요소들.
I'm aware of it and fully understand that people are disappointed as the government has not been able to solve problems related to various unfair issues. More and extra effort will be needed on that.
그런 부분에 대해서
The change in direction sees many young students now protesting against Moon.
지금 정부는
The current government began its term with a slogan saying, opportunity will be equal, process will be fair, and results will be righteous. These are just speculative. They rather showed the opposite things. That's why many young people feel betrayed.
그런 모습들을 보여줌으로 인해서
Gold spoons have replaced gold rings as the most popular gift item, traditionally given at the first birthdays of newborn children, wishing them a wealthy life. Analysts say the trend reflects the bitter hopelessness of the growing army of young dirt spoons.
4 migrants have died and 16 others are missing after trying to cross into Europe from North Africa on a small raft. Spain's Coast Guard said the raft was found drifting around 37 miles off the coast of Morocco. It said 3 bodies were recovered from the water and another migrant died after being taken to shore. 58 people have been rescued. Every year, thousands of migrants attempt to cross the Mediterranean to escape poverty and violence in their home countries. Now, in Southern California, thousands of residents have fled their homes as wildfire engulfed parts of Santa Barbara. County officials declared a local emergency as the fire spread through the Los Padres National Forest. Spokesman Mike Eliasson said over 63,000 people have been evacuated and nearly 2,500 buildings are in danger. He said no injuries have been reported just yet, but one building has been damaged. Authorities are still not clear how the blaze started. Now, 18 years ago, Afghan women could be flogged in the streets if they left the house without a male guardian. Today, the Taliban no longer rule Kabul, yet the country remains as patriarchal as ever. Now, some women are fighting back by running their own female-only public transport network. More in this report.
Parisa Hedri is one of the only 4 drivers working for Pink Shuttle, a pilot bus program which ferries women and children across the Afghan capital.
I'm interested in my work driving, but sometimes my family does not agree due to security reasons. As you know, once a week or once a month the blasts occur. Nonetheless, we are champions and we are not afraid.
There's practically no public transport in Kabul, and women who travel on foot or use the few overcrowded buses that do operate in the city are likely to face sexual harassment. A Toyota minivan full of women does attract a lot of attention, but Pink Shuttle is still the safest option for Afghan women.
There are some young boys and men who drive past us very fast and want to somehow frighten us, but we got used to this routine. They have done it so much that I am personally not scared anymore, and it becomes typical for me.
US President Donald Trump recently said peace talks with the Taliban are back on track after being called off in September. It remains to be seen how much importance will be given to women's rights as the negotiations resume. The Afghan government has issued 275 driver's licenses to women so far this year.
Well, we'll be back with news from the world of business and sports right after this short break. Welcome back. Now in business news, profits at Chinese industrial firms shrunk in October at their fastest rate this year. It's been seen as another symptom of China's economic slowdown. Data released by the National Bureau of Statistics show industrial sector profits fell last month by nearly 10% year on year. This compares to a decline of over 5% in September. Overall, the profits of Chinese industrial companies have dropped by almost 3% this year. China's economy has slowed down because of the trade war with the US. Well, to the stock markets now, and Wall Street's main indexes notched fresh record highs after the release of stronger than forecast economic data. Investors also remained optimistic about a resolution to the prolonged US-China trade war. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq are leading the gains in the US, both rising about 0.25%. The Dow Jones is trading marginally higher. Stock markets in Europe also traded higher after US President Donald Trump made his most positive remarks about the trade talks with China. Earlier, most Asian stock markets closed marginally up. Well, it's 18 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all from me and the team here in Lahore. Don't forget, headlines are next, and for the latest updates you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.